Empezamos. Amigos y amigas,
Dear friends,
muy buenas tardes.
good afternoon.
Hoy, 7 de
Today,
julio,
July the 7th, 2021,
vamos a dar inicio
we are going to start our meeting of ministers and high-level authorities of the environment of the Bolivarian Alternative of Our America, Bolivarian Alliance of Our America, TCP. I would like to warmly welcome the various delegations gathered
en primer lugar
in this occasion.
quiero dar la bienvenida a
I would like to welcome Josué Alejandro Lorca Vega, People's Power Minister for Eco-Socialism of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, a great promoter of this meeting. The People's Minister of Water Management of Venezuela, Evelyn Vázquez Figuera. Also, Daniela Alejandra Rodríguez Martínez, National Coordinator for ALBA-TCP and Vice Minister for Multilateral Topics of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Isabel Teresa Di Carlo, negotiating responsible person for climate change, David Villegas, General Director of Adaptation and Mitigation, Maria Arelis Valero Pérez, Director of the Mechanism of Consultation, Yorlandis Chiquito, Director of International Affairs for Eco-Socialism. Also, as a guest, we have Ricardo Molina, Venezuelan Deputy and President of the Permanent Commission of Eco-Socialism of the National Assembly. Welcome. I would like to greet the presence of Elba Rosa Pérez Montoya, Minister of Science, Technology and Environment of Cuba, José Fidel Santana Núñez, also Minister of Cuba, Dianés Taobada Zamora, Vice Minister, Odalis Huicochea Cardosa, General Director of the Environment, María del Carmen Herrera Caseiro, General Director of the General Direction of Multilateral Affairs and International Law of Cuba, Ulises Fernández Gómez, Director of International Affairs of our dear Cuba. In the plurinational state of nation of Bolivia, welcome. Diego Pacheco Balanza, head of the delegation, focal point to the framework agreement on the climate change of the UN, Juan Santos Cruz, Minister of the Environment and Water, Marguín Herrera López, Vice Minister of the Environment, Biodiversity, Climate Change and Forestry Development, Angélica Ponce Chambi, Executive Director of the Plurinational Authority of the Motherlands, Cynthia Leni Vargas Amurio, Head of the Motherland Unity, Sergio Darío Orizpe Barriento, Vice President of the Plurinational State of Bolivia. Also, greetings to the delegation of Nicaragua, Fanny Sumaya Castillo Lara, Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources of Nicaragua, Javier Antonio Gutiérrez Ramírez, Secretary of Climate Change of the Presidency of the Republic, Vice Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources.
I'd like to welcome the delegation from Dominica, Monsieur Frederick, Minister for Environment, Modernization and Alinagua Affairs, Ms. Mandra Thagen, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Environment, Kimisha Thomas, Senior Policy Advisor of the Ministry of Environment, the distinguished delegation from Antigua and Barbuda as well, Diane Black Laney, Director of the Department of Environment and Ambassador for Climate Change. Michelle Robertson, responsible for policies, Department of the Environment. Distinguished delegations from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Neri James, the Chief Environmental Health Officer of the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment. And the delegation from St. Kitts and Nevis, Eric Evelyn, Minister of Environment. Sharon Bratton, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Environment. Vance Amory, Prime Minister Advisor and National Coordinator of our alliance. Samuel Berich, Deputy Secretary. And from the delegation of Grenada, Nicholas Steele, Minister of Health, Social Security and International Business. Un saludo cordial a todas y a todos. Estamos en una importantísima...
Cordial greetings. This is a very important meeting of our alliance, fulfilling the mandate of the Summit of Heads conducted in person in Caracas to commemorate the Battle of Carabobo. It was agreed to hold this meeting to build together the roadmap of our alliance to face the challenges toward the Conference of the Parties to be held in Glasgow on climate change. Our alliance has always spearheaded the defense of the rights of the Mother Earth at the vanguard of structural solutions of the serious climate crisis humanity is facing. This has been demonstrated in the epic Copenhagen session. Evo Morales, Hugo Chavez, and a historical defense of these principles, of these values by our heads, but also in this stage of the process with many challenges. And thanks to the leadership of our heads, we are facing this new stage. I want to remind you some of the most important elements of the special communique on climate change adopted by our heads in the summit I mentioned on June the 24th to reaffirm that the framework agreement on climate change and the protocol represent a legal framework which is universal. The Paris Accord not only is universal, it has been implemented fully, taking as a basis the principle of common and differentiated commitments and responsibilities. We are all responsible for climate change. However, we know that industrialized countries, they have a greater responsibility because not only historically they have caused most of the emission of these damageable carbon substances. So we need to protect the Mother Earth through consumption and sustainable production, sustainable management of natural resources, and urgent measures to face climate change. So we can meet the needs of present and future generations. They identified that the climate crisis is the consequence of the unsustainable production and consumption patterns of developed countries and the lack of political will to comply with the commitments and obligations. And they stressed the need to change consumption patterns, lifestyles of developed countries, and to reform the economic and financial international system. Another aspect, the application of unilateral coercive and illegal measures according to international law and illegitimate measures also create obstacles for the collective struggle against climate change. Therefore, We demand the compliance with international, with the Charter of the United Nations. We continue the path of the meeting held in La Paz, the Reencountering Mother Earth, Global Reflections to Defend the Pachamama on the 22nd, 23rd of June, on March, the summit of the 24th of June, and this important meeting of senior authorities, ministers of the environment on July the 7th. Therefore, without further ado, I give the floor to José Alejandro Lorca Vega, Minister of the People's Power of Eco-Socialism of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Secretary. Thank you for being in this meeting. I would like to remove my mask. I welcome the meeting of the equals of men and women who are fighting for a better world, and we are building a better world. President Maduro has, uh, has worked strenuously for these meetings to be more frequent and to have more content, be more meaningful. As the Secretary said, the path is clear. This path has been built by the ALBA-TCP countries. And the declaration that we adopt today will consolidate the instructions given by a historical leaders since Rio meeting. Chavez denounced, Fidel denounced the crisis and demanded for actions to fight capitalism and to build a fair world. And then Chavez, the immortal eternal commander, and Evo Morales leading the fight. Bolivia always leading in the field of the environment and fighting for the rights of the Mother Earth. I would like to take this opportunity to greet all delegations. As Secretary Sacha said, I just want to mention the colleagues from Cuba, of the plurinational state of Bolivia, Nicaragua, the Commonwealth of Dominica, the Brothers of St. Vincent and the Grenadine, Antigua and Barbuda, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and the Brothers and Sisters of Grenada. Also, to greet Jorge Arreaza and to thank his team for this effort and this important meeting that we've been planning in order to continue the momentum that you have. We ratify in this historical moment, we ratify our commitment with the Pachamama, and we commit ourselves to meet today in order to approve the path, the roadmap that will lead us to Glasgow. But from now on, we should have a common agenda so we can face as states and as sovereign peoples the effects of the climate crisis and the loss of biodiversity. Therefore, the scientific panel of the IPCC and they alert on the future situation regarding increase of temperature and the loss of biodiversity. This has been a flag that we have raised, and we need to deepen on the joint cooperation among sisterly nations. In the same manner, we have exchanged with the brothers and sisters of Cuba. They have sent doctors to the world. Well, we have proposed that from Venezuela, where we have made progress regarding the handling of forest fires, to help other ALBA nations to reach agreements in order to help dealing with the climate crisis. Therefore, dear brothers and sisters, ministers, I am at your disposal, the national government, President Maduro. he is extremely happy to see that we are going through the fulfillment of this major goal of the plan of the homeland. We will never stop in supporting all initiatives in favor of the preservation of the planet and the preservation of humankind. Thank you, dear Minister. Thank you for your kind words and the impetus you have given to this major meeting. Without further ado, I want to give the floor to Elba Rosa Perez Montoya, Minister of Science, Technology, and Environment of the Republic of Cuba. You have the floor. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Sacha Llorenti, Executive Secretary, Minister. We thank you for this meeting prior to the coming meeting of the parties of the framework agreement on climate change to be held in Glasgow at the end of this year as a platform to support our environmental platform. The current context has forced us to deal with the global pandemic crisis. However, we cannot, however, ignore the climate challenges that we need to face. We can easily understand that if the future climate crisis is not dealt with properly, this could lead to more problems with the resilience, deterioration of ecosystem, and the well-being of people in the future. It is forecast that the climate change effects will aggravate, especially in the island countries and coastal nations. The sea is penetrating in coastal areas, provoking the salinization and erosion of the soils, threatening cultivation and tourism. Also, there are flooding of wetlands, destruction of aquifers affecting the flora and fauna of these areas. It's been said that at the end of this century, the oceans would have taken 1 meter over continents. Cuba and the island regions have been impacted by the Elsa storm in the context of a new cyclone season, which is going to be very active. And this is direct consequence of the effect of climate change in the area. These problems aggravated of late force environmental authorities to generate new dynamics to preserve sustainable environment for current and future generations in order to contribute to reduce poverty and inequality. Ministers, Cuba urges for better use of science and innovation regarding climate management. New policies to tackle climate change, increase of environmental culture, reduction of pollution, and change of production and consumption patterns on the basis of the existent potentials of biodiversity and better availability of financial resources. In this sense, we are conducting virtual meetings of the 13th Convention on the Environment and Development with the participation of experts and scientists of Cuba and 14 other countries. In these meetings, and thanks to the support of Cuba, we ensure that the rights of our citizens to enjoy a healthy environment is fulfilled. Since 2017, there is a state plan to tackle climate change called Tarea Vida, with results in the fields of energy, recovery of beaches, water, soils, and forests. Also, in 2020, we approved the National Plan of Food Security and Nutritional Education, under a territorial approach and participatory approach based on science and innovation, with the purpose of increasing production of food based on sustainable agri-food systems to tackle drought and climate change. In 2030, in the National Economic and Social Plan, we have other goals to increase the forest areas in 30%, reuse of water, reduction of plastic of a single use and other source of pollution, generation of renewable energies up to 24%, and the implementation of financial solutions to contribute to the fulfillment of the national biodiversity goals. All of this has been possible despite the financial economic blockade imposed by the US that has been aggravated of late. Executive Secretary, to meet the needs of the countries to fulfill the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Accord, and other environmental agreements, it is of the essence to preserve and strengthen the alliance and integration. Regarding the coming COP26, ALBA-TCP coordination is essential, and it will be very convenient to be able to have common positions regarding the main topics to be discussed, including the transparency framework and the implementation of Article 6. In this sense, we could explore to assign topics to have a basic document that could then be discussed in order to have a common platform ahead of this important international event. Finally, we agree with our historical leader, Fidel Castro Ruz, that there is no future for America without integration. We ratify our will to support and foster cooperation among the alliance countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Always very important remarks. Allow me now to give the floor to Juan Santos Cruz, the Minister of Environment and Water of the plurinational state of Bolivia. You have the floor. Thank you very much. Greetings, revolutionary and fraternal greetings from the plurinational state of Bolivia. Greetings from our President Catacora, Vice President Choquehuanca. I would like to greet also our brother Sergio Llorente Solis, the Secretary Executive of ALBA-TCP, and also I would like to greet all the representatives of the countries of Venezuela, José Alejandro Lorca Veda, the Minister of People's Power for Eco-Socialism of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Also, I would like to greet Elba Perez, Minister of Science, Technology and Environment of the Republic of Cuba. I would also like to greet our sister Fanny Sumaya Castillo Lara, Minister of Environment and Natural Resources of the Republic of Nicaragua. Also, Cosier Frederick, Minister for Environment, Rural Modernization, and Calinago Affairs from the Commonwealth of Dominica. I would also like to greet the representative of Antigua and Barbuda, of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and also Eric Evelyn, Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and also Nicolas Steele, Minister of Health, Social Security, and International Business of Grenada. The climate crisis is one of the most important and daunting challenges of our times. Climate crisis threatens not only development of our countries, but also the existence and survival of humanity, the reproduction of life on our planet. The industrial capitalist model and the ambition of developed countries have caused the climate crisis. This is the reason why we need to propose a new horizon for our civilization, which is the right to live well and respecting the rights of Mother Earth. Bolivia's position is based on the thinking of the indigenous populations and of the Bolivian people. Our vision on the implementation of the Paris Accords is based on the protection of life and the protection of Mother Earth, and not based on the vision of market or capitalism or gains. Bolivia's position regarding the implementation of the Paris Accord is based on equity, the responsibility, and the notion of shared but differentiated responsibility. And according to our view, we need to announce the fact that the Paris Agreement is based on the market. The Paris Agreement only seeks to protect markets. Our vision is rather an effective implementation of approaches that are not based on the market as a main tool to achieve the Paris Agreement objectives. We give a priority to the adaptation agenda for the climate change, the Nairobi Fund for Adaptation of the National Program for Adaptation, and we also are in favor of the mechanism of losses and damages, also the system of production of small farmers, indigenous populations, without affecting the traditional crops. We foster a multidimensional vision, holistic vision that will associate mitigation with sustainable development. And also the national determined contributions based on the approach which doesn't put at the center the market. We promote also the provision of financing and implementation in order to promote the climate management programs of developing countries. And we want also to strengthen the work being done by the indigenous populations in order to revitalize their voices and to take their example in order to propose solutions to the climate change. But our vision and implementation of the Paris Agreement is based on the need of conducting actions for the next 5 years so that we can establish a trajectory that will avoid the rise of temperature above 1.5 degrees Celsius. It is 5 years. These 5 years are critical in order to stop the climate catastrophe. There are estimations that indicate that we have only a few years in order to supersede the global budget of carbon in order to attain the 2.5 rise in temperature. And at a probability of 66%. There are approximately 195 tons of gigatons, which means that at the current rate of emissions, that budget will be exhausted in less than 10 years. Our countries are tired of the hypocrisy around Mother Earth, are tired of the climate negotiations that do not tackle the reasons of the increase of the temperature. We are tired of the devastating floods, droughts, and ALBA-TCP is the single grouping that can stop the hypocrisy being um, done with the Mother Earth and to direct the Paris Agreement in the right path. So this is the reason why it is important to have an important political meeting where we can agree on our vision in preparation to the COP26 in Glasgow. We cannot be a weak group when it comes to the negotiations for the climate change. We don't want another failure for the climate problem. Only ALBA-TCP, strong ALBA-TCP, able to consolidate a strategic alliance with other countries with similar vision can be a decisive influence so that there will be a true willingness of countries so that real solutions can be proposed to address climate change. The negotiations on climate change pose three concerns. First, the world requires of a reduction, an important reduction of carbon dioxide emissions to cut the increase in temperature and below 1.2 degrees Celsius. But the efforts conducted so far are not enough to attain these objectives. There is an important gap between what the planet needs in order to stop the climate change crisis and what countries are doing, particularly developed countries. Second, developed countries, little by little, are transferring the load of climate change to the developing countries, which is unacceptable. Three, in this new world agreement on climate change, developed countries have fostered the objective of the need zero towards 2050. This is a fallacy because by that year, the atmosphere will contain significant amounts of carbon, which will lead to a rise in temperature going beyond 3 degrees Celsius. So the reaching of the net zero by 2015 is not a serious commitment with Mother Earth. This is the reason why we have drafted a proposal for the peoples of the world and engaged governments with Mother Earth could discuss a equitable and urgent action in order to halt the climate catastrophe. We are proposing that developed countries reach represent a cumulative emissions, important emissions needed to conduct an initiative, legally binding initiative to justify, to multiply by 5 times their contributions in order to stop emissions till 2035, according to the shared but differentiated responsibility. This will lead to a reduction of 20 gigatons of carbon emissions per year. developing countries will also have to reduce their emissions based on the provisions of the developed countries regarding the transfer of the technology and development of capabilities. So from Bolivia, we express firmly that we need to act urgently in the next 5 years if we want to establish a serious trajectory to reduce temperature and to maintain it below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We need to fight for these mitigations and reductions now. In 2010, Bolivia organized the first World Conference of the Peoples on Climate Change and the Rights of Mother Earth, which was held in Piquipaya. This conference proclaimed a Western civilization crisis, and we identified that capitalism was the structural cause for climate change. In 2015, we convened the Second World Conference on Climate Change and for the Defense of Life in Tiquipaya. The conference declared the need of advancing in the civilization model that will value culture, life, and peace, as well as continue fighting against the capitalist interests that oppose life. Bolivia is ready to convene, with the support of ALBA-TCP, a third World Conference of the Peoples on Climate Change in order to discuss the Bolivian proposal, which is also the ALBA proposal, in order to take urgent action to stop the climate catastrophe and to reestablish the equilibrium with our Mother Earth, so that we can also define a concrete stance and to be an influence from the global south on the conclusions of the COP26. So we will invite governments, the peoples, the civil social organizations to back this call and to propose in the COP26 in Glasgow that the direction needs to be corrected and also to live in harmony with our planet. COP26 needs to stop the hypocrisy with Mother Earth. We need to demonstrate there is a real willingness from the government to avoid its collapse. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Santos Cruz, the Minister of Environment and Water. The recuperation of democracy in Bolivia and Luis's leadership has made it possible for Bolivia to take a leading role in international affairs regarding the environment struggle. Thank you very much for your remarks and congratulations. I have not greeted the presence of Raul Icarte, who is the president of Bank of Alba and also the vice president for the Caribbean in the Foreign Ministry of Venezuela. He is a very valuable man with whom we work on a daily basis. Greetings, Raul. I will now give the floor to Faina Sumaya Castillo Lara, Minister of Environment and Natural Resources of Nicaragua. Greetings, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Greetings to all of you, brothers and sisters of ALBA-TCP. It is indeed an honor to greet you. Greetings from Commandant Daniel and Rosario. From our country, we are developing strategies and policies enabling to maintain our position and our stance regarding environment protection, and always demand climate justice. The climate justice has it's an imperative because we have been suffering from the impact of the air pollution in our biodiversity. I would like to give the floor to Javier Gutierrez, the Vice Minister of Environment, and also the Secretary of Climate Change for Nicaragua. Greetings to all of you. Thank you very much, Madam Minister Castillo. I just would like to remind you the glorious feat in Copenhagen where ALBA unmasked the empire who wanted to approve an agreement that had already been negotiated months before. And as the president of Venezuela reminded us, it is the time to build on the momentous and the work that we have been doing, which is very important for our countries. I would like to thank all our brothers and sisters of ALBA-TCP, our dear ministers, authorities of our countries, of the countries of the ALBA-TCP. For the Nicaragua delegation, it's an honor to convey the greetings of our President, Daniel Ortega Saavedra, and Vice President Rosario Murillo Zambrano. We would like to stand in solidarity with the people of San Vincent and the Grenadines for the severe impacts of the climate crisis, and most recently for the Hurricane Elsa. The great capitalist economy using a destructive model of consumption have provoked the climate change crisis. Climate change is history. Now we're talking about a climate crisis, also a planet crisis due to the lack of Christian values and solidarity. We are living very complicated moments with a country which is suffering for pollution and the aggressions of the Soviet capitalism. We have 420 parts per million of carbon emissions. We are emitting more than 15 billion tons of CO2, when the norm should be not above 14 billion tons. Well, brothers and sisters, this is how serious this problem is. The Guardian mentioned some of the findings of the next IPCC report indicating that global warming will unleash serious crisis in the natural systems of the earth, generating generalized events unless some measures are made. The United Nations Program for Environment said if there are no efforts to reduce emissions by 70% in 2015, the average rate will be 1.5 degrees Celsius above that rate. So we also had to add to the COVID-19 pandemic and the raising instability in terms of politics. The UCMs, which are illegal and are a violation to the international law, is also a threat to the ecological and eco-social development of our peoples, undermining the efforts we're doing to overcome poverty. The ECLAC has recognized four crises which have a very negative effects. First, COVID-19 pandemic, which is hampering economic prosperity. Also, we are seeing that the climate crisis is provoking a double asymmetry in emitter countries and most vulnerable countries who are particularly affected. Between 2011 to 2015, we had an important increase of the GDP with a reduction of general poverty by 48% to 24% in 2016, in extreme poverty from 70 to 7%. However, the failed coup d'etat in 2018, hurricanes Eta and Iota in 2020, and the pandemic have caused losses amounting to $29 billion, which is 3 times the GDP compared to 2021. But the strength of our people and our willingness allowed us in 2020 to be one of the most fast growing economies in the region. This is the reason why Nicaragua presented before the UNFCCC in the context of the COP26 four declarations that are essential to revert the various effects of the climate change. First, the declaration of justice, climate with reparations, to declaration of Central America and the Caribbean as a highly vulnerable region in face of the climate change. Three, declaration to elevated losses and damages to the same category of mitigation and adaptation before the UNFCCC, and four, to declare the forest as the best way to face climate change effects. Nicaragua government also created the Secretariat of Climate Change in order to protect the policies regarding the action of climate in vulnerable groups, and we'll also update our national policy on climate change, which will be adjusted to the new times and new struggles. Regarding the recent sessions of the subsidiaries bodies of the UNFCCC, the ALBA group participated actively defending the interests of our people, and we conducted different interventions during the negotiations. However, brothers and sisters, the progress in those negotiations were upsetting, and there was a lot of uncertainty regarding the relevant issues to reduce the climate change impact. Therefore, dear brothers and sisters, ministers, we consider that we need to strengthen our work for the COP26 and the several following issues to reaffirm the mandate of the conclusions of the summit conducted in last year in Bolivia, to defend the climate justice as part of the shared but differentiated responsibilities, to eliminate UCMs, unilateral coercive measures, which are illegal and violate international law, and to also vindicate the importance of the Green Fund, which has not received the expected funds, and also to speed up the implementation of the Fund of Paris. This fund was already inserted in the Protocol of Kyoto, but in 2020, that fund needs to become operational according to the Paris Agreement guidelines, and to demand ambitious targets so that the developed countries can assume their responsibilities to shun the mercantilization of Mother Earth using various mechanisms that are encrypted in the establishment of the carbon markets, and to elevate the losses and damages to the same level of adaptation and mitigation, and to incorporate all the pillars of the UNFCCC according to the Bali Action Plan, which are transfer of technology, financing, adaptation, mitigation, and losses, and to incorporate different approaches, giving the priority to the vulnerable groups, such as women, children, indigenous populations, and the elderly, and to demand that Latin America and the Caribbean be declared a sensible zone for climate change. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters.
Thank you very much. We are mindful of the work conducted in Nicaragua, and your presentation is going to help us a lot in order for us to deal with COP26. And greetings to Commander Ortega and Vice President Rosario.
To give the floor to Co-Chair Frederick, Minister for Environment, rural modernization and Calinagua Affairs from the Commonwealth of Dominica. Minister, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. From the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, the Republic of Cuba, the plurinational state of Bolivia, the Republic of Nicaragua, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and Grenada. We would like to first endorse the general outlook of the esteemed colleagues on the panel today, and to express specifically our Prime Minister's vision to not only rebuild our country after natural disasters, increasingly caused by climate change, but to become the world's first climate resilient nation. I must highlight that a Category 5 storm made landfall on September 18, 2017, battering our country with extreme winds and rain. It left us without electricity and water, destroyed homes and public infrastructure, and isolated communities on our mountainous island. We must make sure that the international community fully recognize that the intensity of hurricanes, for instance, and the frequency in the Caribbean in this season is not an accident. This is because it is a result of climate change. We must all realize that these natural disasters are more frequent, and the economic damage caused by them will continue to increase. We do know for a fact that climate change is largely responsible for a drastic increase in the intensity and the devastation caused by hurricanes in the Caribbean. Our Prime Minister noted after the destruction of Hurricane Maria in September 2017, and I quote, "Our devastation is so complete that our recovery has to be total. And so we have a unique opportunity to be example to the world, an example of how an entire nation rebounds from disasters and how an entire nation can be climate resilient for the future." He also added that, and I quote, "We did not choose this opportunity. We did not wish it. Having had it thrust upon us, we have chosen actively and decisively to be that example for the world." So in the end, colleagues, the ALBA-TCP therefore has an important role in guiding Dominica on its journey to become the world's first climate resilient nation. It can also be realized with good analysis on how to achieve and monitor national climate resilience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for your participation. Really appreciate your input and your leadership on this matter. Now, please allow me to give the floor to Nicholas Steele, Minister of Health, Social Security and International Business from Grenada. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Just as an opening correction, it's Minister Simon Steele, Minister for Climate Resilience and the Environment, who's here to address this esteemed audience. So colleagues, friends, as we draw up the roadmap towards COP26, the COP that is supposed to set us on the path to ambition, it is important to remind ourselves of the challenges we face and potential roadblocks on the path to ambition. COP26 has to adopt new and updated NDCs that collectively will put us on a path to 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, a stocktake of where we stand today globally with our NDCs show that we are woefully insufficient. COP26 has to finish the unfinished work from Paris by finalizing the Article 6 rules and the details of the transparency regime if we are to ensure ambition and environmental integrity. Finance will be a central issue at Glasgow, as we have to assess the progress on the $100 billion climate finance pledge, and just as importantly, launch the process for setting the new climate finance goal that will set the stage for more ambitious climate finance. As challenging as this is at this time, it is critical for developed countries to honor their financial commitments under the Paris Agreement. In addition to the availability of climate finance at scale, the issue of simplified access to finance is also crucial. The issue of eligibility to concessional finance and the need for a multidimensional criteria to determine access to concessional finance that goes beyond GDP per capita calculations that factor in climate vulnerability needs need to be developed, as existing criteria preclude many of us, including the Caribbean, from accessing finance on concessional terms due to their middle income status. As small island developing states, many of us have demonstrated our commitment to the process and developed ambitious programs through our NDCs and national adaptation plans. But ambition without the necessary financial and technical support from the international community will count for nothing at the end of the day. Finally, we have to follow up on the work done in Madrid on strengthening the program for loss and damage by building on the outcomes related to financing for loss and damage, which is critical for developing nations such as ours. Sufficiency at COP26 requires us to address these key issues, and our roadmap to COP26 needs to hone in on these if we are to deliver concrete, practical outcomes on each of these, outcomes that will deliver ambition, outcomes that will deliver equity, and outcomes that will deliver climate justice in Glasgow. I thank you.
Minister, thank you very much for your intervention, and we are taking note of all that you have said. And I think that we all concur with the fact that if there aren't any concrete results from the international discussion process, then of course it is a matter of life and death for everyone. Thank you for your inputs, Minister. Now, please allow me to give the floor to Neri James, Chief Environmental Health Officer of the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Environment from St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yes, greetings to all. I am really glad to be here, but please note that I haven't had a prepared speech. But I do like to say that the issue of climate change is one that a small island state should embrace, and we in VG will support any stride to mitigate the effects of climate change. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I think that in our alliance we are and we have to take special care of the particularities of the small island developing states. 5 out of 9 members of our alliance are SIDS, So, of course, it should be one of the driving forces of all our efforts towards the COP26. Please allow me now to give the floor to Sharon Rattan, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Environment from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. St. Kitts and Nevis has the floor. I see Vincent.
A pleasant good afternoon. I am Sharon Rattan, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Environment in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Please go ahead.
I must apologize, Mr. Chair. My camera, I'm having a problem with my camera. That is why you cannot see me. Yes, so I will proceed.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Excellencies. I am Sharon Rattan, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Environment and Cooperatives. I bring apologies to you on behalf of my minister who is in cabinet at this time. I bring you greetings from the beautiful islands of St. Kitts and Nevis on the occasion of this ministerial high-level dialogue on the environment, and in particular, the impact of climate change on our lives and livelihoods. We are highly appreciative of ALBA's commitment to respond to the needs of its members and to lobby for a position in search of climate resilient measures before COP26. The assistance extended in order to enable us to meet our environmental goals and objectives are sincerely welcomed. Let us take a moment to pause and honor the lives of President Moise and First Lady Moise, who tragically lost their lives earlier today in Haiti. Deepest condolences are extended to their families and the people of Haiti. We hope their perpetrators are brought to justice. Excellencies, COVID-19 has been the greatest challenge of our countries had to face in recent years. The pandemic has severely affected our societies and economies and further exposed our vulnerabilities. In the case of the Caribbean states, the situation is even more acute, given our difficulties on the economic front, characterized by the loss of tourism revenue, high indebtedness, and scarce fiscal space. The recent commemoration of World Environment Day on 4th June 2021 refocuses us on the health of our ecosystems with the theme ecosystem restoration. The healthier the ecosystems, the healthier the planet and our people. Environment degradation must come to an end. We must therefore make every effort to nurture and promote responsible environmental stewardship. St. Kitts and Nevis has long considered environmental and climate issues top priority and has taken bold actions to preserve our natural capital and resources. Our most recent efforts include legislative review of the current National Conservation and Protection Act of 1987 to address the evolving issues of the environment. Resultantly, the proposed National Conservation and Environmental Management Bill is expected to be tabled in our national parliament by the end of 2021. Other efforts include stakeholder consultations on the introduction of a ban on single plastic use, as well as public education and awareness campaigns on forest preservation, sustainable consumption, and environmentally friendly solutions. Serious deliberations are currently ongoing regarding the development of our Royal Bass-Deer Valley National Park. This developmental concept is built on sustainable and integrating a sustainable and resilient imprint. Above all, healthy lifestyles are the overarching vision. St. Kitts Nevis is also signatory to the following international and regional multinational agreements: Convention on Biological Diversity, the Cartagena Convention and Protocols, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, the St. George's Declaration of Principles for Environmental Sustainability in the OECS, and the United Nations Framework Convention to Climate Change and the ESCASO Agreement. With all of in our pursuit to honor these conventions and to also address our own context, St. Kitts and Nevis has a national climate policy adopted in 2017 that outlines how the country intends to respond to the impacts and challenges of climate change, while in pursuit of a low carbon, climate resilient measures. The National Climate Change Adaptation Strategy of 2018 operationalizes the adaptation component of the policy and provides in detail the key sectors that are most vulnerable to climate change along with recommendations. Like many other countries, we have revised our energy policy, and the nationally determined contributions are in progress. It highlights how St. Kitts and Nevis intends to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, energy, and transport sector. As we forge ahead amidst this challenging context, we continue to face the hurdle of classification as a high-income country, as noted by our Grenadian counterpart, which often slows our environmental implementation agenda. And very often, we experience a gap in implementation deficit because the funds and the financial and the technical know-how, they are scarce. My government in particular is pleased to join other members here today. St. Kitts and Nevis reaffirms its commitment to pursue a sustainable environment as we set out to make it a reality. We welcome your ideas, suggestions, and support, in particular, as it relates to preparation for COP26, where we have to have a firm position on how we deal with our vulnerability as small island states. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your participation, and of course we are looking forward to working closely in the months ahead. Please now allow me to give the floor to Diane Black-Lane, Director of the Department of the Environment and Ambassador for Climate Change from Antigua and Barbuda. Ambassador, you have the floor. Is our distinguished colleague from Antigua and Barbuda connected? I don't think he.
Hi, good day, colleagues. Okay. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, Excellencies. Yes, apologies for Ambassador Black-Lane. She's actually currently hosting starting my. Can you see my video now? I don't know if you can see. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, awesome. So yeah, Ambassador Black-Lane, as well as Minister Joseph, sends their apologies and regrets on not being able to attend this meeting right now. It's a very important meeting. We're actually currently hosting the, and quite relevantly so, the UK COP president, who is currently in Antigua and Barbuda on a mission as it relates to COP26, and they're actually right now in cabinet having meetings on that and on matters of climate change and climate action. So I'm just here to send apologies for Ambassador Blacklane as well as Minister Joseph. But we are very much so committed to the cause and the cause of this group, as well as the positions of this group ahead of COP26. And we look forward to effective engagements as we go forward, dealing with the various issues that we have under the climate change agenda. And note well that you do have a friend, especially a friend that is leading a group of small and developing states right now over the next 2 years as we progress and ensure that we continue to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement as well as the convention. So that is it on my end, but really do appreciate you inviting Antigua and Barbuda to participate in this meeting. So back over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Hace unos momentos,
Some minutes ago, the distinguished representative of St. Kitts and Nevis made reference to the killing of the Haiti's president. Our alliance has issued a communique, and given the fact that we are gathered here, I'm going to read the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples repudiate the killing of the president of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse. The member countries of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of our peoples repudiate the killing of the Haiti's president, and we make a call for peace, and we present our heartfelt condolences to his family and to the people of Haiti. Brothers and sisters, we have listened to all the participants in this very important meeting of high-level authorities and ministers on environment. In my capacity as the Secretary Executive of the Alliance, I will now read the minutes of this meeting that have been previously distributed to all of you, and then to submit it to your approval. Caracas, Venezuela, July 7th, 2021. In accordance with the resolution of the 19th Summit of Heads of State and Government held on June 24th, 2021, the ministers and high-level authorities on environment of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America People's Trade Treaty have met in a virtual format with the purpose of drawing up the roadmap towards the celebration of the 26th Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, to be held in Glasgow from November 1st to the 12th, 2021, agreed to the roadmap towards COP26. First, hold a 5-day working session during the second week of July among technical and political teams of negotiations from the ALBA countries under the leadership of the heads of delegation in order to assess and consolidate an ALBA-TCP position towards the COP26 in Glasgow from October the 31st to November the 12th, and its presentation at intermediate events as appropriate. Second, participate in accordance with the COP26 agenda with a joint ALBA-TCP position during the development of COP26 to be held in Glasgow, Scotland, from October 31st to November 12th, 2021. 3. Create a youth and climate change group of the ALBA-TCP countries before August 5, 2021 to coordinate a joint action on priority environmental issues towards the Youth Conference on Climate Change to be held from October 28th to 31st, 2021, whose modalities will be defined in due course. 4. Develop an exchange among scholars and experts from ALBA-TCP countries in August to prepare a proposed position to be submitted for the approval of ALBA-TCP members on the impact of unilateral coercive measures on the implementation of the Paris Agreement and on the right to sustainable development of the country's essential elements for fulfillment of the UNFCCC. 5. Hold a meeting of the ALBA-TCP heads of delegation on climate change to the UNFCCC in September with extra-regional partners of the ALBA-TCP, promoting coordination of the position on climate change towards COP26 in Glasgow and other environmental issues, like-minded developing countries, LMDC, Russia, China, India, African Union in September. 6. Hold the second reestablishing our connection with the Mother Earth International Forum in August in Caracas to follow up on the first meeting held in La Paz, Bolivia on April 22nd and 23rd, 2021, in order to adopt an ALBA-TCP declaration on the Global South perspective on the protection and defense of Mother Earth. And 7, hold the 4th World People's Conference of Climate Change in Tiquitaya, Cochabamba, Bolívar, within the framework of the urgent and equitable call to avoid climate collapse and the reconnection with Mother Earth in October, with the participation of vulnerable groups to climate change, youth, women, and indigenous peoples of the world, the aim of adopting a statement with a view to the COP26 in Glasgow. So this is, brothers and sisters, the minutes of the ALBA-TCP meeting of ministers and high-level authorities on environment that we are submitting to your approval. So if you approve of this minutes, please raise your hand. Very well. The minutes are adopted. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you for your participation. This has been a meeting held in order to abide by the mandate of the state and government. It is a very important meeting because we have set a clear roadmap, concrete roadmap that will lead to effective results so that we can jointly face the challenge of representing our people and the framework of the COP26. So thank you very much indeed. And I would like to highlight the important work done by the technical team, the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry that always give us our support. I would like to thank the interpreters and all the technical team, staff of the Secretariat Executive. Thank you very much. And warm greetings from here from Caracas, and we'll see each other soon. Thank you very much.